National Fire Radio. National Fire Radio.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the National Fire Radio Podcast. This week, the week of May 15th, 2023. All new episodes, including a new drop by the Size Up. So check it out, 5 new episodes this week. We appreciate you coming back day after day, week after week to hear the good word. We have incredible guests with such powerful stories and messages to share, and that's what this job's all about, is talking about it, because when we talk about the job, like I say in every episode, we're making the job better. Check it out, but do me a favor in the meantime, like, subscribe, and share. Talk about the podcast, talk about our social media channels. We appreciate the support. Drop us an email at podcast@nationalfireradio.com for any thoughts or ideas you have about the show. Any feedback, we'd love to hear it. And lastly, do me a favor. Before we roll into the episodes, we couldn't do it without our partners, so please give our partners a few minutes of your time as we talk about the job and the friendships we make along the way. Hey guys, before we start the podcast, real quick, I want to mention the Gone to Texas Fire Forum and Expo being held in Arlington, Texas on June 9th and 10th. Myself, I'm going to be emceeing the event for 2 days with nationally renowned speakers that will be there for the weekend. Mo Davis, Clyde Gordon, Rick George, Mickey Farrell, Jacob Johnson, Dennis Riley, and so on. The list goes on and on. I was there last year, helped MC the event last year. It is a growing conference in an incredible venue. Globe Life Field, which is home to the Texas Rangers in Arlington, Texas, right in the entertainment district, right at the PBR bar, which we're going to have a social after the first night. I'm telling you right now, there's no other venue like this. The room actually overlooks the field. You get to walk the stadium. It is such a cool venue. Arlington, Texas, June 9th and 10th. Check them out. Go on to TexasFireForum.com or go to Facebook and look them up there too. Go on to Texas Fire Forum where you can buy your tickets, get great hotel rates. And if anybody's asking you where you're going this summer, you tell them, go on to Texas. This episode's brought to you by Taylor's Tins. Taylor and his crew at Taylor's Tins have been manufacturing aluminum helmet fronts since 2017. With over 200,000 tins in the market, they are a leader in the helmet front space. Custom design, one-offs to department orders, they can turn them around within 24 to 48 hours. Customer service is what they pride themselves on, and they provide nothing but top-shelf product and service to their customers. Check them out at taylorstins.com and check out their full line of product offering. They've always been a very strong supporter since day one with the National Fire Radio podcast and platform, and Taylor and his crew have become dear friends of ours, and we appreciate the support. And at checkout, for a little extra bonus, use coupon code NFR Sent Me. That's NFR Sent Me for a discount on your order. Exclusions do apply. Anyway, check out taylorstins.com for the latest and greatest offerings from Taylor and his crew. And in the words of Taylor, stop burning up leather. All right, so here we go. We're going to start. Jeremy, National Fire Radio, welcome back to the podcast. Today's episode is going to be fun. I got 3 of these knuckleheads in the room with me today. We're doing a Zoom, so the audio is going to be a little bit different, but we got it on video. Let's talk to the JobTlks Podcast crew, the guys that can't spell JobTlks. We'll start with that and so on, but we'll go around the room. John, Barry, and Will, guys, thanks for joining me this morning, man. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, man.
I just want to say the misspelling was totally financial. We couldn't afford it when we were setting our name.
You know what? I totally get it. You know how many names I went through trying to figure out like what we wanted and how we were going to do it. So I totally get that completely. It's JobTlks. They forgot the A, but the A is intentionally left out, and that's okay because
one day we'll afford it.
Hell yeah, man! I get that. I love it. It makes for a good story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you guys become rich and famous on your show and your podcast, I mean, you got something to talk about where the origin story came from of the name. So I love that, man. It's good shit.
It's awesome.
So listen, there's nothing better than starting off the week with a cup of coffee and talking about jobs. And the name of the podcast is JobTlks. You guys do a lot of different things, which I really like. You guys talk about the job, obviously. You do interviews with different guests where you talk
fire, you talk specific jobs. You guys like to dive in and get the details on different incidents and things that have happened, as well as lessons learned and things like that. You guys also love to do just like a round robin conversation too on different topics. And I love that. It's YouTube based. I believe you're on all the audio channels too, right? People can find you guys anywhere they're digesting their content or podcasts. But I just want to say, keep up the hustle, man. To start off the show, like, I just think that anybody that's willing to do this on their own time, whether you monetize it or not, that's it doesn't matter, right? What this is your time giving back to the job in the way that you think and want to do that. And I think it's because you guys truly are students. I mean, I met John up in Maine this past year. John, I thought we had met previously, but it just must be that handsome look of yours that it must have stuck with me.
I hope so.
But it was fun. You came up, you introduced yourself, you said hello, and that's what I love, man. So many people shy away from the introductions and the conversations. And I wish more people would come up and say hello and introduce themselves, and to learn what you guys were doing and to follow you and see what you guys are putting out. I mean, John, why don't we start with you, brother? Where'd this all come from?
Actually, this actually all started with Barry. It's kind of his brainchild, and it all started in his backyard with the annual meeting of the minds. So if you're going to be in the Northeast around that time, we'll have to get you over there. But
what time of year is that? When should I plan on being there?
I think go ahead, Barry. This is Barry's start.
Well, Barry, then give it to me. Open up, Barry. Let me know where this all comes from, bro.
All right. So essentially, so I went to the academy with John, and Will and I were assigned on Engine 3 together. And we used to watch your platform a lot. And I essentially, at one point, we were a little disenchanted with culture, wanted more out of the job. So essentially, I would hold these gatherings in my backyard to just bring together, guys and gals that love the job to talk shop, collaborate, network, just drink some beers, have some, burgers, and just kind of reinvigorate people that might otherwise be like, hey, am I alone in feeling this way? And we did well. I used to jokingly say I'd bring a bunch of people together that actually had experience going to fires, so I could soak up some knowledge.
I love it.
And so we called it Salty Jake's gatherings, ironically, because I was not one.
Can I share something with you?
Absolutely.
Now that you say that, I bought the domain saltyjakes.com 15 years ago.
Oh, no shit. Yeah.
No kidding.
I own that. It's going to be for a project that I will eventually launch. But I bought that. I was actually going to name the podcast that, but because I'm not really from New England, I didn't think it would stick because I just don't have that cool accent like you guys. So I didn't think it would work. But if you look at the domain saltyjakes.com, that I own that. And I literally bought it like 15 years ago. And I've probably had 10 or 12 people try to buy it from me over the years, but I won't sell it.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Unless the money's absolutely worth it. But
yeah, no kidding.
Firemen aren't willing to pay the money that I want for it. So
no.
Anyway, so Barry, go ahead, brother. Salty Jakes, I love it.
You could host the inaugural episode from my backyard if you want.
I love that, man. Absolutely.
But yeah, so that went really well, and conversations with Will and John, trying to find out like, hey, like what is it that we're passionate about, and essentially it came down to like positively influencing the fire service and fire service culture. And to kick it back to John's like the one that's like, Barry, you should like start a podcast. So I kind of simmered in the brain, and I said, fuck it, it was a good idea. So I literally called my best friends, Will and John. We had no preconceived notions of what it would be. We just wanted to talk about the job, kind of put a positive dent in the fire service, and highlight the people and organizations that are doing it right. And Will had some connections in the producing world to get us going, and kind of the rest is history. So we just started as a couple of best friends that just wanted to do something and kind of take ownership for culture, and looking around and saying like, hey, like if no one else is going to take responsibility, it's on us. And the rest is kind of history, I guess.
Yeah. Will, so what was it like, man, when you had that conversation and you were like, you want to do what? Like, what is this?
Yeah, so it was actually, I remember I was standing in the gear room at my firehouse, and Barry was like, hey bud, you want to start a podcast? And I think I literally was just like, fuck yes, like let's do it. And,
Why?
And that's, like you said, that's kind of how it got going. And
Why were you so just all in?
So part of it was I had a couple of buddies that had started doing a podcast about some military stuff, completely unrelated, and I watched it. I liked it. I also found, like, to what John was saying earlier about like finding like your show through doing this stuff. So one of the things, like, I realized is that if you don't have the right people around you, and I'm not saying people are wrong, but if you don't have the people that are into these kind of things, you don't learn about them. You don't learn about the podcasts that are out there. You don't learn about the training companies that are out there. You don't learn about the names like Ray McCormick, or even Chief Linehan, who you had on last week, or whoever these guys are. And like, doing it brings us to more people. You know what I mean? So like, I was like absolutely in. Like, I didn't have any idea of what it would be. I don't think any of us did, but it was just kind of like, yeah, man, let's do it. Let's do something that feels good, you know?
No, I love that. John, what about you, man? Were you in from the get?
Yeah, Barry's like the fearless leader. I'll follow him anywhere. So,
I don't
but
know about that.
so me and Barry, we had this like intense competition going on all throughout academy, and we kind of forged our friendship on like just grinding out every day in the academy together, whether it's like the workouts, always trying to like move over to each other to get on the same team to get things done. And so I was like, this won't be anything different. We'll get in this, we'll grind this out, and we'll see where it takes us. And
did you guys need it? Like,
yeah,
I think so.
I needed it. I was and I'm very happy with my department. We have a great department. But you know, the days and the weeks and the months that go by and you're not getting any work, and you know, it can be a little bit lackluster sometimes. But you know, we start complacency, right? So it's like, oh man, I haven't looked at this or that in a long time. Now that we're doing this on a week-to-week basis, we're constantly tearing apart, you know, topics and ideas, and we're talking with people about people, what they're doing. And then before you know it, you know, it's like we're learning again, right? So we just keep learning and staying a student of this job. And that's been like, you know, that's given me like the ability to just like keep moving forward. You know what I mean? Even though, you know, it can be tough out there when you're just not getting the fires and not using the stuff that you've, you know, gone to academy for and trained for. But this just kind of keeps the spirit alive.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I also feel like we came out of COVID and we like lacked that connection a little bit, you know, both to the fire service and to each other. And so this was like a good, like, talk about need it, like, get your best friends in the room and you talk about the job, and it's awesome. You know what I mean? And like I said, we didn't know, I don't think we knew where it was going to go at all.
No. And to bring it kind of, Jeremy, to bring it full circle, like, you know, obviously this is a big full circle for us, but there's a picture, you know, we used to watch and follow your page, and like Will and I started at Engine 3 together, and Will ended up going to the squad. So I was by myself for a little while. There's kind of a funny backstory. I had deployed overseas. And when I got back, my chief had asked, he's like, where do you want to go? And I was like, put me back in the trenches with the men, chief. I'm not going anywhere. And then within 3 months, Will transferred, my lieutenant transferred, my senior transferred. I had a whole new crew. I was like,
thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks, guys. But I literally used to watch you on Instagram as a reminder that like I'm not alone. There's guys that love the job. I'll show you a picture of me and Will at a veterans gathering. It was probably 2018. I had my Solid Brothers hat on. And like you were literally the guy that I looked up to. And one of the nexus, I was like, you know what? Like, he's right. Like, we have to take ownership for culture. So it comes back to you, man. Like, you were a huge inspiration for us.
Yep.
I thank you. I got like chills. It's kind of what's important about this, right? Is like the fact that we're here today talking about the job, the fact that you guys recognize that it's okay to talk about it. You're talking about it anyway. Why not share it? Right? Like I get confused on that, right? I am seeing lately, which is really pissing me off, but in my own world, I'm seeing guys think it's cool to hate the job right now, which it goes full circle, right? Everybody deals with that. But I'm there's so much negativity in some areas right now that I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I just don't understand it. But I'll tell you this, man, for me, it's always been important, and a big part of why I did this from the get was to tell people it was okay to share their own stories. And for you to say that, I'm completely honored. And it's hard for me to fathom that I have an impact on people. But
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
believe, and I'm starting to understand more and more with the power of our channel and what we've been able to do. I do recognize that we do influence in some ways. And that's been hard for me. I'll be honest with you guys. That's been really hard for me to understand that, like, I'm anyone of any type of influence. But here's the thing, right? Proof is in the pudding. And I'm talking to 3 dudes today that are totally into the job, and you guys are pushing yourself to do weekly content and put it out there to share your love with others. And if I had anything to do with that, then hell, man, I win. Like, we win. We all win, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
that's
the fire service
point.
wins.
That's the point of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm honored. Thank you, Barry, for saying that. It means the world to me. I'm also getting a ton of gripes about the Solid Brother hats and how we discontinued them, and a lot of people are pissed off about that. But there's a whole backstory on that.
Yeah.
It's so on. But I will say this: where does the continue push and drive come from? I mean, I know what it takes to grind and to put out content regularly. I do it day in, day out for the last 5.5 years. I mean, this is I got 5 episodes today that
Yeah.
I'm in, right? Like, it is a drive, and it's a grind, and it takes its toll on me. This weekend I kind of unplugged, right? It was Mother's Day weekend. I kind of just unplugged. I did some Instagram and Facebook posts, but I didn't record anything. I didn't do anything extra or above and beyond other than just doing some posts. I didn't work on any of the admin stuff, the business stuff, nothing. I just put it all away, right? Where does it come for you guys? Where's that personal drive and push come from that's pushing you guys to do what you do?
So I think first I'd have to give credit to Will, because Will is our social media guru. He's the guy behind the scenes doing the legwork day in and day out to put all that content together. So Will is, I have to, you can't, obviously he's one of my best friends, can't say enough about him anyway, but I think the drive for us is really one rooted that we all really, really love the job, and we've come to the conclusion that, like, it is worth it. And it's important to make sure that the voices of the people that love and care about the fire service, it's important to be louder than the people that maybe have something else to say.
Love that.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like, I think JobTlks is essentially just rooted in friendship, really. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, like, it's our core mission and our core values are essentially, one, trying to make a positive dent. But if JobTlks, no pun intended, caught on fire tomorrow and burned to the ground, like, we're still going to be friends. And that's, I think,
Right.
an important thing.
And I also think, like, you talk about, like, when we first started, we definitely had some people that were chirping in our ear about being young guys trying to do this. Always happens, right? But then you get like, we're here with you today. We had Chief Nardelli was one of our first guests, some chiefs from our own department, chiefs from Johnny's department, and then guys that, like, I know I personally really respect on the job, that when we approached them to come on and talk about stuff, they were like, yeah, let's do it. And then you realize, like, you're not alone. And like you were saying, like, fighting against that, like, it's cool to hate. Like we always say we're fighting against the cool kids club. You know what I mean? Like the people that try to rally together and make it seem like being into the job is a bad thing. And then you realize you have those outliers. They're not outliers. They're actually numerous. They're just the silent majority. You know what I mean? And so finding all those people has been really refreshing.
Yeah.
John, what about you, brother?
I would say for myself, man, like, again, like, the educational aspect of this. And I tell people all the time, I don't want to drive training and annoy people. But the problem for me is I always tell people that I'm an Irish potato picking MFer, and I just need to do the same job day in, day out, and get really good at it. I need a simple task, right? So I'm not the smartest man out there, so I need reps. And so this whole drive for me with this whole thing is because I keep getting reps, even if they're mental reps. And then, some of the things that we're doing out there, hopefully going to lead to training and some other things. But that's the whole drive for me, is that if I don't constantly keep myself aware of, it's hard. You go to work, you do a couple of 24s and you go home. You take a week off, you're not at the fire station for 10 days. And if you're not thinking about your town, if you're not thinking about, fire tactics and things like that, you go back and you're like, it's almost day one again for me. So I have to keep myself in the loop. And this is a very good way, a positive way to do that. And it just keeps my mind engaged in the fire service. And so, to go back to what Barry said, and I'm just hanging out with my friends doing cool shit. So,
Well, and that's it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I love that. I think it's, you're willing to, if you're doing it anyway, why not share it? Right?
why
Like
not
that's
share
what
it?
I look at,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
years ago, like some of my favorite times in the firehouse are, standing around that bumper, the back bumper, the front bumper, having an impromptu conversation in the firehouse, in the volunteer world, even having a beer at the firehouse if it's allowed, right? Like where you come from. Like, and you get some of the best stories, and when you can start taking the old stories from the guys that have been there for quite a while and pairing those stories to the new kids that have never heard them, even though I've heard them 12 times in the last 30 years,
Mhm.
I want to hear them again. I
Right.
want to hear them
Right.
again. I want to hear them again, right? And it's like, how do you capture that? And that for me was a big catalyst of why we started National Fire Radio, was to capture those stories, because a lot of those stories are leaving and we don't have a lot of stories to fill in the gaps. And these guys are leaving and taking those stories with them. We don't have those fun monumental stories that we used to have. We should be making our own. But I think the opportunities to make them are becoming less and less. So we need to dive in even harder so that we can build our own legacy and share those stories with the next generation. And I think that's really important. But for you guys, like I love it. But I have to think, like Will, you kind of alluded to this a little bit. The reinforcement of people you respected on the job, whether from your own job or local, and they bought in and they said, no, we're like you guys. We want to talk about this, right? That had to be a strong reinforcement for you guys, because there's always going to be people chirping in the beginning. There's always going to be the haters. And for you guys, I have to think it probably wasn't the easiest thing to start, no?
No, it was easy, and like I think speaking for myself, like I've had enough experience in life that I don't care so much about the haters. You know what I mean?
I do.
So it wasn't terrible, but it definitely was helpful, if that makes sense. Like it was definitely helpful to have those guys, because then if I had, that cool kid that was chirping, fine. If I had, somebody I respected on the job, like
Right.
Paul Morrison or Chief Eichels or Nardelli, and they were like, hey, you guys are kind of missing the mark. Like, I see what you're trying to do, but you're kind of, that would mean something to me.
100%.
You know what I mean? Those guys don't mean anything to me, because they're not doing the things that need to be done in the fire service.
Not always the easiest thing to say, though, right? I mean, a lot of
Right.
people are afraid to put themselves out there. Barry, was it easy for you?
No, I mean, not necessarily in the beginning. I think there's always that that hesitation to kind of step out of line, step out of the crowd and differentiate yourself. And I think, when we talk to the guys and talking to Will and John, obviously daily, it's been very freeing for me in the sense that I no longer, I mean, everyone cares. At the end of the day, I think everyone to a degree cares what people think. But once you make the commitment to step out of the line and say, hey, this is something worth doing, I'm going to do it regardless of what people have to say about it. It's very freeing, because now I very much view things through the lens of like if someone, has something to say about JobTlks, which is fine, people have varying opinions, but my immediate thought process is, okay, well, what are you doing to make the fire service better? And if
Right.
you're just talking, then I honestly don't really give a shit.
Right.
But I very much view it through the lens of like, if you're not actively participating in being a solution and driving the fire service forward in a positive way, then you're just part of the problem. And I don't really, put much weight. Same, with like what Will was saying, I don't really put a lot of weight or stock in people that are just it's easy to catcall from the bleachers the guy that's down trying to do something and trying to make an organization better. So that's kind of how I view things now.
Bro, it takes somebody that's got strong will, though, no pun intended here, but
Yeah.
to really thank you, John.
Yeah.
To kind of like, I don't know, understand that. I mean, so many people are afraid of that. And I think so many people are afraid to stand up. And it takes a certain somebody, whether, like Will alluded to, it takes some point in your life where you've come accustomed to and comfortable with being able to stand up for what's right. You hope that people's character is a big part of who they are, but I find people buckle all the time. And
Yeah.
people struggle with owning their shit and putting themselves out there. So
Right.
for you guys to be able to understand and then want to do that, kudos to you, man, because there's a lot of people that love the job, but they have to be secretive about it.
Right.
And I hate that. I absolutely hate that.
And I think there's also strength in numbers between us. So like if we like you kind of built this thing by yourself. Like I think that's a tougher position to be in than to have three good friends who, if you get chirped in your ear, you have each other to bounce each other. When you're having that down moment or you're having that like moment of doubt, like Barry can lift me up, John can lift me up, I can lift them up. You know what I mean? So it definitely, I think having the three of us doing this together makes a huge difference as well.
Yeah.
Moment of doubt, man. I've had tons of them.
Yeah.
I still have them. I had one, 2 weeks ago, a week ago. I was like, what am I doing? Like, can I do this? Am I allowed to do this? Should I take these permissions? Should I not? Like, I'm spending all this time. Is it worth it? Like, man, I'll tell you, man, I think if you don't have moments of doubt, I don't know if you're doing it right, to be honest.
Yeah. No, what do they say? If you're in your comfort zone all the time, you're not getting better or moving forward,
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I owe Will and John a lot in the sense of like, I'll be the first to admit, like I've had moments of doubt. It was probably like 3 or 4 months ago when I'm like, hey, like I have a 8-month-old kid and like I'm trying to finish school and I'm trying to study for the lieutenant's exam, and like, Will and John essentially like, hey, this is worth carrying on. This is important. Like, so if you need to back down to 25%, we'll carry the load.
Outstanding.
So that's like that's your friends, so.
John, where's that come from, bro?
Well, I gotta say, I don't know, man. I guess I am.
He's just a solid brother.
I don't
know. There it is.
I just enjoy this stuff. I sit around and we had this conversation with a few people, but specifically Chief Brian Nardelli. He said when you're sitting at home and you're on YouTube and you're watching fire porn videos, he's like, do you see electricians sitting there like on YouTube watching how to install an electrical outlet or whatever they're doing? And it's like, no, we sit around and we watch this stuff day in and day out. And so I just have an interest in listening and watching and trying to listen to like people that have come before us. I like to try to learn from other people's mistakes. I have this uncanny way though of like dragging myself through it and making the mistakes first. It's how we all learn the best, but I have this knack for just really effing it up so I can figure it out later. So that's, and I don't have a problem sticking my neck out there. I kind of always do. I'm pretty outspoken. I have opinions on a lot of things. I'm really trying to. It was hard for me for my first year on the job to really just shut the hell up.
Yeah.
And then, day 366, I was like, all right, time to unleash the beast.
I think
let's talk about the last 12 months.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think there's something very important there, right? Like to kind of just wrap that a little bit and talk about it a little bit more, right? Wrap it with a bow, is that like there's this fine balance between being opinionated and wanting to speak your mind and give your advice or opinions on a matter, but then knowing when to hold back and let people find their way as well. And I think the other part of that too, John, and I'd love to explore this a little bit further too, is that it's okay to take the permissions to make the mistakes. Like people are so afraid of making mistakes. People are so afraid of putting themselves out there. Job talks, you're putting yourself out there, right? Like, but on the fire ground in training, It's like, how many guys are stepping up to do that search drill first or do the not drill that everybody's uncomfortable doing anyway, and everybody's going to screw up anyway. Like,
Right.
we need people that are willing to step up, take the lead, and learn from mistakes. Like, everybody's going to make a mistake on a fire ground. I don't know any firemen, or I do. I know plenty of firemen that have never made a mistake on
Yeah.
a fire ground, but those guys are never going to get better. They're never going to
Yeah.
learn. I screw up all the time. And if you don't learn from that, well, then it's just insanity, right? It's the same thing over
Yeah.
and over without a
Right.
different outcome.
Right.
And so, to that, finding your place, finding your voice, finding your experience. I love that, John. I think that's really well said in your case. I really do.
Yeah, the important part of that is, and I've learned this from, I never really thought like I needed a mentor, and I haven't gone up to anyone and said, hey man, like you're my mentor, but there are plenty of people that I work with that I watch close and kind of study and see what they're doing, see how they're doing it, and try to take their example. Whether it's like, being the leader and, doing trainings, or, if I work on another group and they're doing some kind of training drill, I'm bringing it back and to my group, and we're gonna do it. I actually I unlocked the status of training captain as a firefighter on my department. So, in good firefighter fashion and fun, I've gotten heckled on that a bit, but I enjoy it. That like when I walk in the morning and guys say, hey, what's up, captain? I'm like, good morning. I'm happy to hear it. It's fuel for the fire, and I love it. So I got to say thanks to those guys.
Well, listen, man, those guys push you.
Yeah, they do.
Right.
So.
I think it's important to be pushed. I think it's important to be challenged. I like to push my friends. And if you're a friend of mine or somebody close to me, I'll push you harder than anyone, because I know what your worth is. I know the value you can bring. And sometimes I think I need to be that voice. Maybe I don't be. Maybe I'm that guy that's too overbearing and over the top sometimes. But I also see, like, I love pushing people and then seeing them actually get to where I thought they could be, and they get there. Yeah. And that is so satisfying for me, but it's also for them to understand, like, hey man, I can do this. Mm-hmm. I can bring this to the table. I can perform this way. I can learn this. I think it's powerful. I really do. So something else you hit on too, and Barry and Will, I'd love to get your take on this too. You said you don't have, John, you said you don't have a specific mentor, yet there's many people on your job that you like to watch, which in turn kind of mentors you in your position, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There's guys that I notice, like, you have those guys who get along with everybody for one reason or the next, and they're really good at it. They like have this approach where they can get on everybody's level with them. And that's one of the things, like you said, you can be overbearing sometimes. I can be the same way, but I look at the guys who aren't, and I'm like, all right, let me try to reel it in and take some cues from this person. And then the guys who are just, studs, whether it's, with, I don't know, it could be anything from like the training division of it, like guys who just know how to get guys to get out there and train and to do things. And then, but even taking, and I got to say, even I got some advice from a lieutenant of mine. He's a captain now. And he said, this is a long career. He's like, you do have to realize that there are times that you need to just be able to sit back and read. It doesn't have to do anything with the fire service, but you need to sit here and you need to like spread your time out amongst a bunch of things and more or less become a well-rounded individual in the fire service. And that's, so I could sit here all day and I could name probably 10 people that I'm sitting here like emulating, like, all right, this guy,
I like this piece. I like this.
I like this. I like that.
Yep.
I'll take a little bit from everybody.
Yeah.
To try to get myself there,
But my point of that, which I really like, was that the fact that you've recognized that, because like I struggled with that. People ask me all the time, did you have a mentor? Did you have a mentor? Did you have a mentor?
Right.
And I'm like, no, like I didn't, but there's a lot of people that stand out to me about what they do or how they act or their command presence or their fireground presence or their officership or their abilities to do this. And those things stand out to me, and I like to emulate that, or I like to digest it and say, man, I want that piece from him. Like, he's not my mentor, but it's certainly somebody that I looked up to in this regard.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Will, what are your thoughts on that, bro?
It's funny. We obviously kind of think alike as a crew, but I feel the same way. So like I always say, like, find a mentor or whatever you want to call it that is someone who's doing what you want to do in the fire service, right? So it, like you said, like I have mentors that I look up to for how they're leaders, like their leadership abilities. I have mentors or whatever you want to call them that I look up to because of their tactical sense, or people like Johnny said that just can get along with everybody and know how to motivate people. So I feel kind of the same way. Like, and they're also, you don't want to call them mentors necessarily, but there are also people you watch that you're like, this is absolutely what I don't want to do, you know? And I think
They're
that's
mentors too, man.
that's just as important.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No,
if I can see this and I can avoid, like, I see what this person does and how people react, and I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? And then I find somebody, you know, or hopefully have somebody that I can kind of be a little bit of a reflection of in the more positive sense.
This episode's brought to you by Teledyne FLIR. Teledyne FLIR is the originator and creator of thermal imaging technology. In 2013, FLIR launched the K-Series camera for the public safety sector, in particular firefighting. They have created cameras over the last 10 years for every position on the fire ground. From tactical to situational, their cameras help us make the right decisions on the fire ground. So check out Teledyne FLIR, check out their product offerings, and engage them on their social media and ask them for more information and education in regards to their product. Teledyne FLIR is producing one of the best cameras on the market, and they're a proud sponsor and partner of the National Fire Radio Podcast. So go over to www.flir.com and look up the public safety file, and you'll find the latest offerings from Teledyne FLIR.
Yeah, good points for sure. Barry?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm very much along the same lines. I generally try and always surround myself with people that are better than me, to kind of, you know, like high waters lift all ships. So I try to find people that are either like-minded or make me better in some way, and even if that's challenging me in ways that might be uncomfortable or ways that I don't particularly feel that I need to be challenged, but ultimately ends up being good for me. But as far as the fire service, yeah, I mean, as soon as you said, I do have one specific mentor, and I'm sure Will and John know exactly who I'm going to say. But
No,
yeah,
it's not Schmetty Freckles, is it?
Yeah.
yeah. So our division chief, Freddie Eichels, has had a huge impact on me in my life, the way I view the fire service, you know,
Nice.
what's right and wrong. So I hope he listens. And I'm fortunate enough to call him a close personal friend at this point. And it's nice because you can have, you know, mature relationship at work, and, you know, he's your chief.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's been a huge benefactor to my development. But, you know, akin to what Will said, like, you can have, you know, fire service leaders, military leaders, people that influence your tactical operations perspectives or leadership or culture. I mean, I would say, like, you know, formal versus informal. Like, I've considered you an informal mentor, and like what culture should be and how, you know, what we care about and driving fire service culture forward. So yeah, I think, you know, it takes a village. But yeah, I would say Chief Freddie Eichels. So.
I love that. No, and that's cool. I love that. I wish, I mean, in some regards, I wish I could be like this guy, and then I could just be like, you know, shower this guy with like all my appreciation and gratitude for, you know.
Yeah.
But I don't have that. But for you, I'm kind of jealous of that in a way, but that's awesome. But it also takes a village, like you said.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too that you kind of alluded to that we skip over, we're so involved in the fire service, like it's a lifestyle, right? Like, you guys live it inside and outside the firehouse. I mean, obviously with JobTlks, you guys get together once a week, you do all the stuff that you do. And then when you sit around at home, even with your wives and kids or girlfriends, whatever you have, right? You're still talking about fire, right? I mean, I do it too, right?
Yeah.
But I look at it this way too. Mentorship is also outside of the firehouse. And Barry, you kind of alluded to that. Like, I look at guys that are good family men.
Mm-hmm.
Good husbands,
Yep.
good fathers, good financially, smart guys that can help you with your retirement or real estate decisions or business decisions, like all of that, right? I think mentorship across the board is super important. We always get blinded by the fire service because that's what we are and that's what we do. But man, there are some of the best firemen in the world that have the shittiest home life or the shittiest marriages or racking up the divorces or all these other things that come along with it sometimes. And you often wonder, like, man, I wish like he would be open-minded to, somebody else in that area of his life. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I just think that being a good person comes across also at the firehouse, right? Like I'm a firm believer that if your personal life's in good position, you can be in a good position anywhere in your life. And that includes walking through the door at the firehouse. And if your personal life is in shambles, I think that comes across the floor to the firehouse as well. And so I think it's important that mentorship needs to be more than just the senior guy riding that engine or a chief in the buggy. It needs to be people in your life that you think have a positive impact on you, regardless of their position or where they stand.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it was it Chief Linehan that said just being a decent human being.
100%.
No.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And that's for me, that's the selfish play for me with National Fire Radio, man. I get to talk to like the most incredible people, right? You guys get to do it too. And so if I spend an hour with you guys today, there's a couple of things I wrote down here that I like, and so that impacts me. So as I go through my day and then I do the narrative for this podcast and it makes me think of you guys and what you're doing, that betters me, right? So that's my selfish endeavor with National Fire Radio is I get to talk with the coolest people in the fire service. I get to talk to people that want to talk about how good the job is. So I love that. Let's talk about the show real quick. We're talking about mentorship. How hard was it to ask some mentors or guys that that have reputations on the job to be on your show? Because I know I still 5.5 years in, 300 episodes or whatever the hell it is now, right? Like, I know it's still awkward for me sometimes asking people to be on my show. So what's it like for you guys? Was that hard in the beginning? Is it hard now?
We have a secret weapon, and he's called the Streets Diplomat, and his name is Johnny JobTlks. John does a lot of our talking for us in that regard.
I love it.
Yeah, it's once you establish a connection with somebody, the cold calls, I think Barry's kind of mastered that one, but once you make a connection with people, it's kind of easy to get. I will say the first time. So a late friend of mine, actually, I sat down with him a couple years back on St. Patty's Day, and he said, I heard you started a podcast. And I said, yeah, I did. And he said, well, congrats, man. Why didn't you tell me? I'm like, we just started it. We're just getting our feet wet. Yeah. And he goes, do you need anything? And I'm like, I said, I'll come find you when I do. And he goes, dude, I can get you Nardelli. And I was like, yeah, I was going to ask you for that. I'm like, but we need to get a few episodes out first. And then, so he finally sent me his number, and I'm like, pacing back and forth at the firehouse, and I'm like,
I fucking love it, man.
I'm like, right?
There. I get it. I absolutely get it.
And I'm like, just text him. And that's so I texted him, and I was like, hey, you available for a call? He said, absolutely. So I gave him a call, and then the rest is history, But yeah, making that first phone call to get Brian on was, it was a little like, it's like you almost don't want to like waste anybody's time or whatever, but then you realize the people that you're reaching out to do this stuff for, they're all into this stuff. And so it just turns out that everybody's like, yeah. And then you gain all this support, and then I had mentioned something to my chief about, we're looking for ideas for the show. And within a day, he came back to me. He's like, hey, what do you think about this? And I'm like, absolutely, let's spin it up, So it's just that once the wheels start turning, it's a little easier, but it's definitely, reaching out to people for this stuff can definitely be a little nerve wracking.
Yeah. I think it's too, and Barry, I'd love to hear your point of view on this, since you seem to be the ring leader here, behind the scenes, if you will, the guy that got this going. But like, I carry such a burden with me to be sure that I deliver upon their time and energy spent with me, right? Like, I worry so much that we bring value for the guest all the time. That is something that is so in front of me when I do things like this, that if I don't bring my A game and I don't think our delivery's there or the distribution's good enough for them, it crushes me. Like, I worry every single episode that we're able to make sure that we give the man or woman that's willing to be on as a guest to give their time, that it's representative for them, right? That's super important.
Right.
Barry, what are your thoughts?
I think, John said, I'm okay at giving an elevator pitch at this point. To, to a few people. We've been lucky to have them on the show or come to our events, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I think that the episodes that have had like the greatest gravity with me have been people with like a really important message, or people that are willing to open up about personal stuff. So we had, and he actually reached out to me, a close personal friend, John Talon, who came on to talk about alcoholism in the fire service. And that was where I felt like a heavy burden to really like, we need to fucking get this right.
Yeah.
It's a really important message. And, the bravery that he displayed in coming on, and
yes,
he's on Hyannis, and I actually met him in a ropes class, but just the fact that like a close personal friend and someone that I look up to and hold in high regard trusted me and trusted John and Will with his message on our platform. It wasn't like a heavy burden, but it was an honor, and it was something that we tried really hard to make sure that we got right. So those are the things that really stick with me, is people that trust you with their message and, things that are important to them.
Those episodes for me, it's like I'm like having a blast, we're having fun, we're laughing, we're talking, and then you have a serious episode and you're like, holy shit, this is heavy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, you kind of knew going into it probably was going to be, right? You pregame a little bit, you understand the topics, where you're going to go.
Yeah.
And then you think about like, and I'd love to ask you this too, but like after that conversation, the return on that conversation, the amount of emails and messages I get, DMs and so on. I mean, have you guys felt that as well? That you've reached out and people have come back to you and said like, hey man, you made a difference in my life, or, you kind of helped me reset in the job, or, my family life's a little bit better because I took some advice I heard on your show. Like, do you guys get those messages? And if you do, what do you do with them?
Yeah, I think we definitely get, and it comes through different platforms, whether,
Sure.
People are messaging Will on social media, or coming up to us in the firehouse. And I think that's like one of the greatest endorsements we've ever gotten was, I had a guy, I was on a detail to a different house, and I had a guy that I didn't even think knew that we had a podcast, not a guy that I would even think that like listen to podcasts at all. Just came up to me and was like, hey man, I listened to your episode on this. He's like, that was a good episode, keep it up. And that's all he said. And I was like, that's all he needed to say.
That's sometimes the most powerful one,
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think like you said, like the distribution of it is maybe a little challenging on our end, being small. And so I feel like when we have guests on, like they have to know, like, I want your message to reach as many people as possible, but we're not a big platform. You know what I mean? So we don't have like a huge guest list, or we don't have like a huge viewership yet. Hopefully one day. But I definitely feel like you were saying, that like burden of like making sure if they're going to take their time to give us this message, that we put it out correctly and to as many people as possible. Because if they feel it's important enough to come on and talk about, then we should feel it's important enough to like get it out there to be seen and heard,
It's a really good point, Will. And that goes to then your work ethic behind the scenes, right? It's like making sure that the delivery is everything and more than you could possibly do for the guests, while continuing to push your platform forward, to push their message forward, right? Like That's all part of it. I also know this too, though. I'd rather 300 followers than 3 million followers if the 300 love and are involved and they're part of the community, right?
Yeah.
Numbers are just numbers, right? And, you can boast. I mean, we talk about our download numbers because we have to, because we have sponsors now and things like that. But you look at the engagement, right? It's like, what kind of engagement do we get? If definitely. I'm doing 5,000 downloads in the first 45 days or 60 days or 30 days of an episode, right?
Yeah.
Great. However, like, what's the engagement, right? And so on. So like, numbers are numbers to me. I think what really matters is the engagement with your community, the connection you make, And I'd rather have 300 all in than 3,000 with 10 all in, and you know, the balance doesn't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I agree with
I
that.
agree. Yep.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think where, and you know, Will and John can probably speak to this as well, where I felt the greatest, not like burden or pressure, but like, so we do these lecture series kind of on like a quarterly basis where we bring people in. And our most recent lecture series, like, you know, I had told Will and John, you know, you always got to hustle and sell tickets. And I'm kind of the pessimist of the group. And, you know, Will and John carried me over the finish line during my inevitable panic attacks that we haven't sold enough tickets yet. But, you know, we had Steve DiSrusso from Manchester Fire, who's an absolute gentleman who got burned up pretty bad at a fire. I actually live in Manchester. But just the biggest thing for me was like, you know, I didn't care if we sold, you know, 3 tickets or 3,000. Like, I just wanted the people that were coming, that were entrusting us with their message, to ultimately just be proud of us. Because, you know, Nardelli was there, Eichels was there, Ray McCormick, and Steve DiSrusso. Like, I just wanted them to be proud of us, and like that their time was you know,
Sure.
worthy of, you know, coming down and believing in us. And, you know, and the backside of that is obviously people are paying to be there, but specifically Steve DiSrusso, I don't know if you've ever had a chance to talk to him.
I've not.
I don't think there was a dry eye in the house during his presentation. But him entrusting us with his message and coming down, and that's where I feel like I'm like, you know, we really got to get this right.
Well, listen, man, that's what I always say to people is thank you for trusting me with your story, right? Because it's, you know, they don't have to do that. And, you know, for me to be a steward of their word, and we've built a community where we can share their message, then thank you for trusting me with that message, right? And that's hugely important. Let's talk about the lecture series. It's a pain in the ass, is it not?
It is, yeah. It's always
So
a struggle.
Before
Yeah.
COVID, we were doing our On Tap series where we would go in and do the bar takeovers and stuff. We're going to get back to them. We're going to get back to some live events. But what I'm finding now is I'm doing more events with other people that are throwing them and then inviting us to be a part of it, you know, which I don't mind, because it's
Come
less
on down. Come
less
on
of
down.
a burden, man. Less of
Yeah,
a burden. But there's all that work that goes into that. Why do you guys work so hard at something that you probably get little monetary return on?
I think I'll take a cue from you about you know, your selfishness about going around and doing this and talking to, you know, all these awesome people selfishly, because I want to hear what these people have to say, and I want to sit back and I want to learn. And you know, it's like we threw this event and we put some work in, so we had a free you know, front row ticket to listen to these guys talk. And you know,
and the VIP, you get behind the scenes too.
That's
like
it,
you
that's
get to
it.
have this guy, he's captivating, right? I mean, it's
Right.
like, it's awesome.
right.
Yeah.
But you know, I will say it's like, and I'm a last minute Larry too. I'm a fireman, right? So I guess it's tough. All of a sudden you got, you know, 50 tickets sold, and you're like, well, we need to get at least a here. And then within the last couple of days, it's like, hey, the ticket's still available. You get all these texts like, yeah, get on and get them. And then before you know it, you know, it's we made the sales that we needed to make the show work. But so that's the struggle of it. But every time we've done it, it's been well worth it. And the reviews we get, all the messages I've gotten from people, like, hey man, keep it up. I'm definitely coming to the next one.
Good.
You know, so it's worth it. It's just worth it in the end, all of it.
That's cool. Yeah. What you guys said, what you do it quarterly? You try to?
That's our aim, or at least like twice a year. We want to get into like hosting live fire training as well. There's not, like, part of when we started doing this that we looked at, and like part of the reason, like you asked, it's worth it, is like there's not a ton in the metro Boston, New England area. Like in Maine, you see, in Connecticut, you see it. You obviously see it other parts of the country, but there's not a lot in our backyard. And so like being able to bring that in, and I want to say we had a guest on, Justin Silva, and he actually reached out to us. And one of the things I thought was one of the coolest things he said during the episode was just in the beginning. And he was like, thanks for having me on. This makes New England firefighting feel big. And like, I think that's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah,
You know
it's
what I
awesome.
mean?
Absolutely.
So part of it is obviously selfish. Like it's selfish that we get to be a part of this and talk to these people and, like, to your point, sit at the bar with Ray McCormick afterwards and shoot the shit about his, FDIC speech in 2009 and getting in trouble, and you know what I mean, like just that kind of stuff. But the goal too is to ultimately get into doing more. Like, we want to get into actually having like hands-on training and live fire classes, and like if we can provide that service in this area, I think it'll all be worth it.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So what's next? I mean, there's a lot of things happening here. There's a lot of things you want to do. You guys are doing weekly episodes. Is that what it is now?
We switched to bi-weekly. So part of that, like as Barry had said, is Barry and I both have young kids. Obviously you have kids, you know how the toll it takes, and we're kind of getting our feet wet with this, and not a lot of monetary return. And that's kind of a hard balance too, because we're not in this to make money. We're in it to promote the fire service, but like for our time and stuff. So one of the things we've done is we've kind of gone to more remote episodes, and we're doing bi-weekly episodes so that we can manage it a little bit better. So we have a little bit more time and ability to manage what we're doing.
I think I want to say this to you though too. As much as you're doing this for the fire service and for yourselves and so on to promote it, people have to understand too that it is a time-consuming, expensive hobby.
Yes.
And at some point, it's okay, like, to ask. And there's some point you have to put money in your pocket to be able to keep doing this. And a lot of people I talk to say this, right? Same conversation. And I tell them, your time is worth money. If you're missing, if you have the opportunity to work overtime, or you have the opportunity to work a side job, and you decide to give back to the fire service by doing a podcast instead, like, there has to be a way that you can do this and sustain yourself as well. And so don't be afraid to look at ways to monetize the show. Don't be afraid to look at ways to raise some money to support you guys, because ultimately it's not a sustainable model to just do it for free forever, right? And so there has to be a way for you guys to find that balance. And, I've helped a lot of people along the way over the years to understand that, because even myself, I didn't want to ask until we were ready to ask. And that was literally 4.5, 5 years in.
Yeah,
we just recently started asking, because for me, it was, we had to lay the groundwork first so I can give somebody a return. But I think it's okay. I think it's okay for you guys. And I don't want you to shy away from that conversation by any means.
I think a big part of it for us is that we need to feel genuine. Like
I understand.
Like I don't want anybody, and we don't want anybody coming to us and being like, oh, you're trying to grab money, selling your t-shirts or whatever. We obviously have them and we do that, but
you do the right thing.
Yeah.
If you guys continue on the path that you're on and you do the right thing, right? And doing the right thing is always the right thing. Authenticity, transparency, being truthful with your audience. If you deliver the same message and content and you're able to put a few dollars in your pocket so your kids can eat, or you can stay home one day, you know what? That matters. And that makes you better, right?
Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
It's unbelievable. Guys that are so in love with the job have this unbelievable passion for it, and we're willing to sacrifice so much for it. And I get that, right? On the job, we're willing to lay down our life. At home, we're willing to lose money. Like, again, we're talking about electricians aren't watching installation of outlets on YouTube.
Right.
So why are we willing to, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
we sacrifice so much for the fire service. It's okay that if you have a platform or you're giving back in some ways, it's okay to take a little bit from it too. You know what I'm saying? It's okay.
Yeah.
As long as that message stays authentic. The second you sell out, or the second that becomes the goal. And ultimately, if you watch how many people try to do and emulate what we've been doing over the last 5-6 years now and fizzled out, it's because they weren't truly in it for the right reasons. Right. And so whether you monetize or not, you got to remain the course. You got to stay the course and do the right thing. And if you do the right thing, I don't think the money gets in the way.
Right.
you know?
That's a good point.
Right.
So,
No, I
yeah.
appreciate that.
And whatever I can help you guys with too, by all means. I mean, this is what I really enjoy doing. I mean, the fact that we opened up with you guys kind of saying that, we had, I had a hand in, at least, helping, you know what, it means the world to me. And for that, I feel indebted to you guys. Like, whatever I can do to help you, if there's anything I can offer, you guys want to do some more joint projects together, you're doing your lecture series, if I'm available, I'll come out, like whatever. Let's do it, man. Because
Absolutely.
this is what I love. It's guys that love the job that are willing to put themselves out there and talk about it. And that just kind of goes back to how we opened this morning, was coffee and job talks. I love it. We're talking about the job, but you guys too on the podcast, and it should be said, people that haven't listened before, what can they expect when they listen to your episodes? I mean, what are you guys laying down?
We try our best to capture firehouse table conversations on topics that matter and deliver them in a platform that's convenient for people, whether that's driving to work or on an airplane or whatever. And we try to strike the right blend of culture, tactics, and conversation. But really, we just want people to know that, one, it's okay to be into the job. It's okay to love the job. And Will says this a lot. Like, we just feel that we just want to be like a repository of information, right? We're just one of many. Like, we want people to listen to National Fire Radio as much as we want people to listen to Job Talks, as much as we want people to, read a magazine or go pick up one of Vinny Dunn's books. And one of my favorite things that Will says is, like, we don't care what you do, just do something to make the fire service better. But yeah, when people tune in, I hope that they have a couple laughs, maybe learn a thing or two, and walk away a little bit more reinvigorated and realizing that the job is worth it, and it's worth it to be into it.
Absolutely. And I think, like, adding to that is, like, we're pretty young on the job, and we talk about, I know you talk about all the time, fires are down, incidents are down. We do different things now, so we don't have 30 years of experience in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even early 2000s fighting fires. So if we can bring people on our show that can pass something off to somebody else, like somebody in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska, having the benefit of hearing Freddie Eichels or Paul Morrison or Justin Silver or Brian Nardelli speak, like, that's hugely, like, important for us. And that's kind of like, that's kind of one of the things that I love about doing it.
Listen, it's the power of the platform, right? And the fact that, you guys are willing to open up yourselves to share a message with people that are hungry for it. I take for granted the fire service that I'm a member of here in the Northeast, in New Jersey, right outside of New York City. I take for granted the equipment, the training, the people, the everything, right? I take for granted because it's what I know. It's what I've known for almost the last 30 years. It's what I've known in the fire service. I've never run out of a one bay firehouse in a very rural town in the middle of America, where it's literally neighbors helping neighbors when the neighbor's house catches fire, and everybody in the community comes out, and they're running a truck that's 50 years old, and they are having pancake breakfast or a chicken fry to raise money for a $2 million fire truck. Like, it's crazy, right? When you think about that, but that is a big part of what the American fire service is. Not everybody is rooted in urban and suburban areas. There is a tremendous rural fire service in America that doesn't get the abilities it deserves. And so for me, like I said, I take for granted from where I am, but I'm starting to learn more and more, the more trips I go on, the more people I get to talk to, how important the influence is for them. That 100%. There's an 18-year-old kid, a 16-year-old kid, a 25-year-old man that is in central Kentucky running some hard equipment, begging for turnout gear and appliances that work. And if we can share something with them to make them feel more powerful or better for it, fuck yeah, man. That's what this is about.
And not for nothing, but those guys, and you, this is one thing that I love about your platform is all those innovations from those people that have to get by, and
That's
they have
right.
all these little tips and tricks and things that just make life easier and better. Like it's always a two-way street, like to change the communication, right? Like the old guy can always learn something from the new guy and vice versa. So like I love that ability to like get out, and like I said, your platform is great at that, showing all the like seeing all those people that have to work with limited resources and what they're able to do and accomplish, and then being able to again like give them some knowledge and know-how from some of these awesome dudes in our job. You know,
it took me a long time to really understand that there's a big world when we talk about the fire service, and there is every aspect of life throughout it. And you know, if we're going to represent the fire service, if we're going to deliver a message to the American fire service, it needs to be representative of the American fire service.
Yeah.
And it can't just be rooted in strong Northeast opinions and values, right? We need to be able to share what we know and what we experience with others that maybe don't have the abilities to have those experiences. And so we could pass on that knowledge. And then through those tips, tricks, and hacks on apparatus or appliances or operations, like those are all things that can truly help on the channels of delivery of today. Right. And that's the power of it. Right. And so if we're going to talk to the fire service, let's talk to them, you know?
Yeah. Yep. All of them. Yeah. Love it.
And that's been one of our missions is to try to get everybody represented on our show, because, you know, listen, in the small town of Stoughton, I can watch all the FDNY videos I want, but we just don't have the resources. And so the idea for us is, you know, and I'll listen to podcasts with FDNY guys on them because they have great things to say. There's no question about it. But, you know, I can't relate to that always. And so one of the missions we had was to talk to other people and see how they do it and have these conversations, because that's more relatable for 90% of the people we know in the fire service, let alone 98% of the fire service across the country. And so having like a relatable platform so guys can say, okay, yeah, I see what he's saying there, or that would work good for my department that's the same size, was kind of just sharing knowledge. That's is just a huge goal of ours, just to share.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, and that's what it's truly all about, right? And that's when you know that your delivery is right, your mission is right, the foundation for which you guys built JobTlks. That's what it's about, right?
Absolutely,
man.
I love it. So what's next? We're winding down here. We've been going for about an hour. You know, what's next for you guys? What are we looking at? What are we doing? What's exciting?
So credit to Will. Will does some fundraising on his own every year, and so JobTlks has a team getting put into the Heroes Cup. For those of you guys who don't know about the Heroes Cup, it's a giant fun fest for firefighters, police officers, EMS, first responders, and so we raised a bunch of money. We're working with Detect Together, donating all the proceeds to that.
Nice.
And so we're putting our roster in the next week or so, and so you'll see us there June 9th, 10th, and 11th.
That's the Heroes Cup is hockey, correct?
Hockey,
Yep.
That's right. It's a big
It's
hockey.
it's in Boston, no?
Yeah, just outside Marlboro.
Marlboro, Mass. Yep.
And it's it's like a weekend long tournament, right? Of all like first responder hockey teams battling for the cup, correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
It's all public safety and military.
Okay.
And I'm hoping we're supposed to interview the guy that started it on Tuesday.
Oh, nice.
Hopefully, so we'll have that in, and we'll have an episode up all about it. No, guys,
I actually I tried out for the team, Jeremy, but I can't skate backwards, so I was cut from the roster.
They cut you.
or forwards.
Yeah, or
all.
forwards for that.
Yeah,
matter.
it turns out turns out Will and John are forward movement oriented. And my backwards skating is
You're just holding them back, brother. Sorry.
Yep.
You know what? You guys are brothers. You drink beers. You talk shop. You got a podcast together.
But I am the official water boy.
The water boy.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well,
he's gonna be
are
the
you
coach
guys-
Bombay.
Will, you guys taking donations?
Yeah, so you can donate to our team. I unfortunately won't be there. But I can give you the link after this to make
please.
donations to our team. So I don't know if you know what Detect Together is, but they're kind of leading the charge on cancer and PFAS and all that stuff in the fire service. So everything we make over our $2,000 entry fee goes directly back to Detect Together. So I do Super Bowl squares every year, raise some money. That's buying our uniforms and paying our entry fee. So basically everything that anyone else donates will be going back to Detect Together.
Cool. Well, we'll make a donation.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely, man. I love it. So Barry, well done, man. Good job putting the team together, pal.
That's what he's known for.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it might have been the initial brainchild, but it would have been nothing without these two. So
I get it. I mean, I got a team behind me. Rob and Sebi have been there since day one. And now, FDIC, I had 7 people with me, and then we have a whole husband and wife marketing team that have, employ several people behind me on the marketing and creative side that we work with different manufacturers with. So like, I get it, man. I get it. But it's fun to watch the vision come true. No?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
still,
pretty surreal, man. Pretty surreal.
We're still soaking in, and we're just a couple of guys that wanted to talk about the fire service, and it's incredible to think of where it's taken us and hopefully where it takes us.
Well, I think it has everything to do with your passion and your delivery. You guys are certainly doing it for the right reasons, and I think when you do, you'll win. And you guys certainly are standouts, and I appreciate you joining me today and talking about you guys and the JobTlks podcast. Barry, where can guys find you? Where can people find you? They want to listen to you. What channels? Where are you? What are you doing?
Oh, geez, I've never done this before. The pressure's Will, do you want to do it?
We're on
away,
all of our social media is the same. It's JobTlks, JobTlks. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and then obviously we're on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, trying to figure it all out.
I get it, man. And I think that's the thing too, right? Is like, this is new to most of us, right? Even myself, and we're still navigating new spaces every single day and trying to figure it all out. So it's not going to be perfect. It never will be perfect. We're just a bunch of firemen, but we're willing to take those risks and chances of trying something new and different. So guys, bravo, man. Well done.
Awesome, man.
I appreciate you joining me today. And
thanks for
it was
having
a lot
us.
of fun. I appreciate you guys.
Appreciate the support, Jeremy.
Yeah,
Cool.
Good to see you again, brother.
Yeah, stay right here. Don't go anywhere. Let me just sign off for the audio sake, and
All
then
right.
I'll be right back to you guys. So,
Okay.
everyone, thank you for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast, JobTlks Podcast, JobTlks. Forget the A. It's JobTlks Podcast, no A. These guys are doing really good things for the fire service. They're putting together a great lineup, and they're sharing their passion and knowledge about the job. So take this story today, take it back to the firehouse and talk about it. Because when we talk about the job, we are making the job better. Fellas, thanks for joining me. We'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.